So hello everybody, I'm back again, obviously. I promise that I'm not going to make another video on this fucking drama, because it isn't even a drama, it's just a nothing, right? Nothing burger, as you Americans would call it, right? But I wanted to put something straight. The last video that I made was very much biased and very much rooted in emotion. I wanted to make sure that I put out a more objective viewpoint on this, because I didn't feel happy with that video just being left there. It would have been like, I don't think it's necessarily bad to have it if you wanted to just know what I felt when I initially heard it, but like that's my opinion. This video is trying to look at the situation objectively, because I think that there are just so many misconceptions going around currently that I think really only creators are spreading, from what I can tell. I've slept on it, I've looked at other content by other people, and I think I've summarized it. I've got a document in front of me. I've summarized some points here just to make sure that I talk about the shit that I want to talk about. So I'm gonna get started immediately so I don't take too much of your time. So this situation with Hoyoverse creating this little extra group of people, essentially, that can be allowed to get official leaks from companies is and it isn't bad, right? We'll talk about the good things first, and then we'll talk about the bad things. So one of the good things about this happening right now is that it makes it so that the company can control how and when leaks happen, right? So obviously, leaks are bad in general, and every company doesn't like it. It doesn't matter whether it's gacha, it doesn't matter whether it's like developing a AAA game, they don't like it. So they're just going to try and have them not happen as much as possible. Obviously, right? Fucking insane take, I know. But what they're doing here, Hoyoverse is making it so that they're not going to try and directly combat those leaks on the leaks is like turf, essentially. What they're doing is they're taking eyes away from those leaks, from the third-party sources, so that they can put out official sources, so that they can more easily control who sees those leaks, because they know there's a huge portion of people, right, who go and look at the leaks and get to know the character as much as possible before they're released, right? Any information at all, doesn't matter how concrete it is, they want to know immediately, so they're taking advantage of that by actually releasing information that were way truer than whatever leaks could put out, and it therefore reduces the impacts that leaks have with this specific game and this specific company. Now, it won't immediately get rid of all of them by any means, but it will lessen the impact somewhat. Another good thing as well is that because they're able to do this now, obviously, they can't do this by themselves. They need other content creators to help with this and to make sure that this can, be easily controlled. So obviously, then they provide incentives for creators, because if there wasn't incentives, why would anybody do this, really? Why would anybody try and go in a contract with Hoyo and do this for them, to be honest? Because that would just mean that they're wasting their time, essentially, right? They're putting in more effort than they're actually getting out of it, which is why they're setting up all these bonuses and shit, like letting them access all this information so much earlier. Which, it's fair. I understand why. My opinion about it. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea. It's not that it's a good idea. I don't necessarily like it in general, but I do definitely understand why they're doing this, 100%. Another good thing is that, yeah, as I mentioned before, for people who want to get guides early, or for people who just want to know what character does and how to build them, and that leave it at that, they can satisfy that portion of the consumer base very easily. But for anyone who is wanting to still look at other creators, when their character comes out and listen to their takes, it's not going to affect them, really. So long as it's not slanderous. And, you can, again, as far as I can understand, literally correct me if I'm incorrect, right? But if you are able to criticize a character and say that it has bad stats, or say that it doesn't work well with this, or etc., you can't just say, for example, though, that the character should never be pulled, or the character will literally make your account so much worse, or some shit like that, because that is slander, right? And I know one specific person didn't seem to get what the difference was, and he actually asked what slander was. You know who you are, but holy shit, I couldn't believe when I heard it, because I swear to God, okay. You know what? Not the video. Objective. Okay, so for anybody who is actually wanting to get this information from other people, who aren't really bothered about getting it first, who are wanting to, for example, go to the specific creator and listen to the take about the character and when they release, so that they can be better informed on whether they should pull or not. They are not affected either, right? So long as it's not slanderous, it's fine, okay? They can still go and do that. That consumer base will still be able to go to that specific creator, even if they're not part of that small CC group that has access to the leaks. They can still, that creator will still be able to make the content when it releases, and they'll still have people who want to see it. So that is fine, right? That is essentially very little different, if not like no difference at all, between what happened before and what happens now, right? And the last big thing that I also want to put out as well is, even with this happening, it does not affect the normal player base at all. It does not affect your regular player who does not care about the internet and all the CCs and shit, right? Does not affect them whatsoever. It only affects the content creators, because one, it keeps the players, like they can play the game and they don't feel an impact, which means they keep basically everyone on the game, which is great. And obviously we'll get in a minute, we'll get to why the content creators are suffering, and why the content can suffer, and why it's harder for them. But yeah, the non-player base aren't affected, which is amazing, which is great. And it's nice that they don't have to do anything different. They can just keep playing the game how they want to, essentially. So, on to the way it makes us bad, right? The biggest reason why this is bad is that it, as far as I can understand it simultaneously removes all competition and makes it way more competitive at the same time. Because, so what they've essentially done is they've created two different groups of people. You've got one group of people, which is a lot smaller, who have access to official leaks that they are allowed to put on their channel, after screening, of course. And then you've got everyone else who is going to have to wait until the character comes out to better assess whether the character's good or not, or whether they should pull, right? So, concerning this group, the latter half, right? This doesn't, as far as I can tell, so long as you don't react to the videos that have the leaks in them, because they are technically leaks again, which is a bit of a grey area, I'll admit. They're not especially clear as far as I can tell, but just basically don't react to those videos, even though, you can still reference them, you can still talk about them, but just don't show gameplay of that, right, until the character's released, as far as I can tell anyway. But for this latter half, basically nothing else has changed. You can still talk, when the character's released, you can still put your opinions out, you can still make guides to the characters, but the guide making itself will be so much more difficult, because again, you have to really decide who you're catering for. Because if we think about this logically, right, no one ends, even if you're looking at the character even when it gets announced on the website, looking at the gear, the stats they have, what abilities they have, what light cone they have, no one, when looking at that official website, will ever be able to get number one on that. You know why? Because leakers exist. They will always have information all the time that whether or not it's confirmed, whether or not it's actually going to happen, right? Loads of unconfirmed shit, but basically they will always have that information way before content creators will, every single time. So if you want to be number one in that regard, you gotta be a leaker. You gotta be a person that goes to all these unofficial sources and third parties and risk getting found out by the company and getting completely shut down, right? So that is the way to get number one. You can't be number one regardless, but obviously people wouldn't necessarily consider that, because they're just considering what, for example, like just the normal player base, right? And the normal content creator space, where they have to wait until the character releases before they can actually get, access to it. Which I suppose in that case, yeah, you'd have to scramble to be number one. But in reality, you can never be number one, right? But it's still the case in now, but in a slightly different way, because you still have leaks, but the leaks are official, right? And whoever gets those official leaks will be number one. Although, again, it's a fallacy, because there's more than one content creator that's got that privilege. So essentially, they'll be releasing those guides immediately at the same time, so no one can truly be number one. So I think that concept has just been destroyed now. You can't be number one. Really, you could only go and make guides if you have an interesting take. And I have, again, seen a lot of comments regarding this. If players want to go and see a guide maker about a specific character, then they'll go and see them, right? I know I said before that there was a large player base that, like, well, large portion of the player base that wanted to go and look at get the information as quickly as possible so that they can plan to build their character. But it's not quite as big as I initially made it out to be, because there's still quite a lot of people who don't care about that, who will just go to their favorite content creator for their opinions and decide then. And at the very least, even if people are not going to be looking at any content creators, they'll decide for themselves because they have a working fucking brain. I know, shocking, right? They're not sheep. Holy shit. But regardless, this affects content creators to some extent. Well, it does mean that they'll need to just change strategies, but it doesn't completely eliminate making content for Star Rail in any case, right? You can still make content for Star Rail, even if you're not part of this elite group of creators, right? You can still make it, and so long as you're not slanderous, nobody really cares, right? But it just means that they'll need to freshen up how they do it, and that's it. Once they've gotten used to it, you won't see anybody complaining, let me tell you. So now we've covered that. And the other thing that I want to mention, it isn't as important, but it is also kind of bad because of the fact that these CCs are being put on pedestals, right? These elite CCs, we're elite because they get access to these official leaks. They get put on pedestals, and then they're able to give out information. And obviously, they wouldn't lie to their consumers, right? They wouldn't lie to their audience, but regardless, it puts way too much pressure on them, right? It puts a lot of mental and psychological strain on them that they've got to deliver. Like, they had to deliver before because they decided that they were going to be one of the people that were a guide maker for the game. But now they're also in a spot where it's incredibly difficult to get into. They're going to have to try 3 times as hard to make sure that content is as accurate as possible. And yes, of course, reportedly, there are people who, like, everybody in that elite sphere gets their videos screened anyway. So anything that the company doesn't like, they get removed. Which it sounds horrible, but again, it's understandable. I'm being reserved on that specific bit because, you know, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with that. That's just my massive bias speaking there. But regardless, it makes it it's gonna probably wear them out a lot more than if it were just a normal content creator, because now they're being directly watched by Hoyo with a close fucking eye, and they know that as well as everybody else, and everybody else knows of their elite status. It's like having the blue check mark, right? But maybe not as bad in some circumstances, because you know that you're a different class of person essentially, instead of just being the normal content creators and the normal players, right? So those are essentially the main cons of this, as far as I can tell. But I know I'm not quite scratching the surface for some other issues. I can't seem to find any others right now, because as far as I can tell, this is just really not really benefiting reactors and some other content creators, or just making their life a little harder, right? That's it. Otherwise, nothing's changed in the grand scheme of things. So, you know, I don't necessarily mind this, but I am generally worried about like how this will effectively go on further with this game, because now that they've begun this campaign to really restrict how these leaks get distributed and what information gets put out regardless, I don't know how much Hoyoverse is wanting to grip the player base's balls so that they might, not saying that they will, because there's actually no evidence to suggest either if they will or if they won't, but there's a possibility that they could go all the way and be incredibly tyrannical and say, well, if you're not part of this elite group of content creators, you cannot make content on the game at all, and they'll just basically be Nintendo and strike anyone who isn't part of the creator sphere, right? It can happen, but I don't want it to happen. I am going to keep my ear out for any new developments on the situation, but this should be the last video that I'm going to make about this, because I wanted to make a more objective view on the situation. But yeah, I didn't want to just leave my biased one there, because it might give people the wrong impression, and I don't personally feel good about leaving it there. So you'll have both of them to look at, right? You'll have both of them to look at. So that's really it. honestly, it's very quick. I don't want to talk about this for too long. You'll be having another video later today, which is the counter-side video that I've been working on. It's a fun one. People might not like it for a certain reason, and you'll find out why. But I had loads of fun making it, let me tell you. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, please, just share it with people. I don't really care about if you like it or not, honestly, because, my content's pretty mid, to be honest. But yeah, if you like it, you like it. That's really all I can ask for. I hope this has been, relatively neutral, and as neutral as I can put it. But if I've missed anything, put it down in the comments below, right? And I'll add it to another list in the description or something. But yeah, thanks very much for watching. See you in the video in the next couple of hours or so, or however long it takes me. But it will be the same day. And have a good day, everybody.